Hello, my name is Tony. This one was requested by Patreon patron and staunch channel supporter and contributor Numinous. It was on my list from way back, so as interest in seeing it done was duly issued, I duly thought I'd duly do it. Let's do it then. In Magic, directed by Dickie Attenborough, Anthony Hopkins is Corky Withers. At the outset of the film, Corky is a charmless, nervous stage magician doing card tricks for nightclub and bar audiences who couldn't care less. His mentor, an old stager, Merlin E.J. Andre, who taught him all he knows, is dying, and Corky's quite effortlessly flatlining every excruciating gig he plays, until he finds a gimmick. The gimmick is Fats, a risque, fast-talking, wise-cracking ventriloquist dummy. His act takes off, and he's soon being managed by a grizzled, cigar-chomping talent agent, Ben Green, Burgess Meredith. Green lands Corky the biggest gig of his life, his own show on network TV. All he needs do is take the network's standard medical examination and sign on the line. Just a formality, surely. Not quite so simple. Corky has some unique mental health issues he'd rather not come to light. He's finding it difficult to control Fats both on and off stage. The dummy has become a manifestation of his own psyche that even he considers a separate entity with a life of its own and treats accordingly. Now this can be a beneficial element in making his act a convincing one, providing it can be switched off when the gig is over. If it can't, then it's not really an act anymore, is it? It's something else. Corky's solution is to bail out and drop off the radar. He returns to the place he grew up, a recession trash dump in the Catskills, more precisely to the home and business of his schoolboy crush Peggy Ann and Margaret. She lives in a house near some holiday cabins by a lake. It's a kind of rustic Bates motel with hunting, fishing and forestry, and business is not good. Neither is Peggy Ann's marriage to the terse and ill-tempered Duke, Ed Lauter, another face from Corky's past. Peggy Ann is still beautiful and sweet-natured, but now careworn and faded around the edges a bit. She remains Corky's object of desire and unrequited love. When Corky rocks up and pays for his stay in the cabin by the water, they both act as if they don't recognize each other, each thinking they've slipped out of the memory of the other. Corky rectifies this when he alights at her door with Fats and uses the dummy to reintroduce himself and charm the dear lady. A card trick convinces her that she and he are soulmates, and they end up sleeping together. Corky starts to formulate a plan of escape to a different life with Peggy Ann, which won't include Fats. A dangerous idea, as Fats is the jealous type who doesn't respond well to competition or rejection. Things get darker when Green turns up at Corky's cabin and he's engaged in a volatile two-way argument with Fats. He tries to pass it off as a rehearsal, but Green isn't buying it. He realizes Corky's got serious problems and challenges him to make Fats stay silent for 5 minutes. Corky struggles and lasts a fraction of the time before Fats springs to motor-mouthed life again. Green makes to leave to refer Corky for some professional medical help. In a panic, Fats demands that Corky stop Green. In response to the question of how?
With what? Me!
Catching up with Green, Corky batters him repeatedly with a heavy dummy. To dispose of the body, he swims with it out into the lake, planning to leave it to sink. Trouble is, Green isn't dead, and when he fights back, Corky must drown him. When Duke returns from a trip early, he suspects that something is going on with Peggy Ann and Corky. He invites Corky to talk down by the lake, but rather than confront him, confesses that he loves Peggy Ann and fears losing her, something Corky wasn't expecting. At which point, he spots Green's body washed up on the shore. Thinking the man may still be alive, Duke sends Corky to fetch help. Suspicions aroused, Duke decides to search Corky's cabin. He finds evidence of Green's identity and is then promptly stabbed to death by what appears to be Fats holding a knife, but is in fact Corky guiding the dummy's hand with a knife clasped in it. Corky manages to persuade Peggy Ann to leave with him, but she insists on telling Duke first face to face. Now although that could be achievable, Duke won't hear any of it as he's a bit dead and past caring. Fats throws a spanner in the works by revealing to Peggy Ann that Corky's card trick is just a ruse he uses to get women into bed, and she's nothing more than another in a long line. She locks herself in her bedroom and won't speak to Corky despite his pleas. Fats takes full control, exerting his power by turning Corky into a human puppet, making him perform a series of actions, literally anything he says. He orders him to kill Peggy Ann. Corky speaks to Peggy Ann in Fat's voice from outside her locked door, apologising with gentle charm and deep regret, leaving her a small wooden heart he's carved for her. She's warmed to him again. Why, she might even open the door. When he returns to the cabin with a blood-stained knife, Fats is initially pleased, until, that is, the blood is revealed as Corky's. He's fatally stabbed himself and is dying so that he can never harm Peggy Ann. As they lie together on the floor, man and dummy, they wonder which one of them will die first. Shortly after, Peggy Ann walks to the cabin, calling out that she's changed her mind and wants to run away with Corky. She playfully imitates Fat's voice and tosses the wooden heart into the air. Malevolent ventriloquist dummy movies are a very small subgenre. There's been some over the years, but not all that many. About 5 feature film manifestations and a handful of TV show episodes that used the concept, 2 of which hail from the original Twilight Zone series. Of the movies, Dead of Night and Magic are the best examples. In fact, it's Dead of Night, a 1945 British anthology horror movie that was the most obvious source of inspiration for Magic. The Dead of Night story, imaginatively titled The Ventriloquist Dummy, was directed by Alberto Cavalcanti and is the standout episode of the film. It contains many elements that have been adapted into the narrative of Magic by screenwriter William Goldman and director Attenborough. In the 40s, Dickey was in the formative years of his screen acting career, working in and around Ealing, Pinewood and Elstree studios. Dead of Night was an Ealing movie and one that wouldn't have escaped his attention. He was working in that very world when the film was made and released. As for William Goldman, who wrote the novel Magic upon which his screenplay is based, I would imagine that he was well aware of the Dead of Night episode and that it formed the basis of his book and script. Magic reunites a team of sorts, talents who had worked together before. The link is a bridge too far. Joseph E. Levine produced, Attenborough directed, Goldman did the screenplay, and Anthony Hopkins was one of the stars. Here they're working together again on a project that is far more intimate, tonally very different, and infinitely smaller and quieter. I always thought that Magic would have translated well as a stage play. Couldn't say that about A Bridge Too Far. One explosion and the play would be fucking over. In Dead of Night you had a ventriloquist, Maxwell Frere, Michael Redgrave, and his dummy Hugo. Hugo is an extension of Frere's personality as Fats is of Corky's in Magic. The difference here is the dummy wants to leave the ventriloquist, whereas in Magic the opposite is true. Maxwell has no insight, he is completely insane and truly believes that Hugo is another living entity. Corky, on the other hand, knows something is wrong, has an inkling things ain't right, but has no clue of how to fix it, other than some half-baked plan of finding true love and running away. Ultimately, it's all too late. Maxwell ends up in an asylum after strangling a rival he thought Hugo was going to defect to. When his psychiatrist allows him to be visited by Hugo, he smashes the dummy to pieces in a rage. He ends up locked in for the long haul, speaking only with Hugo's voice. Corky ends up dead, and Fats dies with him. By 1978, the horror genre had been redefined by The Exorcist, The Omen, Carrie, The Texas Chainsaw Massacre, and proto-slasher fare like Halloween. Hammer had closed the doors on film production, and the teeny boppers craved a night of Cronenberg or Carpenter, a creature feature Farrago like Jaws, or something with a fizzing day-glow lightsaber shoved up its intergalactic backside. Nothing succeeds like excess, as a doomed gay playwright and wit once observed, and he wasn't far off the mark. Talking of Oscar Wilde, he noted with some irony after a spell in Red in jail that punishment for the homosexuality that got him banged up was imprisonment with a bunch of men with time on their hands. If I ever go to prison, I hope it's a bordello annexed with a distillery and a movie theatre. But I digress. Back to Magic. In 1978, how was a creepy little mood piece like this supposed to fit in? It had a small cast, limited locations, minimal gore, 5 unspectacular deaths, and that's if you include Merlin and Fats, otherwise it's 3, no special effects, little violent action, and something of a sweetly atypical love story propping it up. How would it ignite the box office? Well, it wouldn't, and it didn't. When I saw it as a standalone, no supporting feature, there were maybe 3-4 others in attendance, and 2 of those, a couple, left before the halfway mark. Their noisy French kissing and finger-banging session was over, so they left. Magic wasn't going to live up to its title in terms of financial returns, I guessed, which I think is a shame. Most of the show is reliant on Hopkins' performance, because if he can't convince as a tortured ventriloquist with dissociative dissociative identity disorder, formerly multiple personality disorder, then it's dead in the water. Luckily, he went out of his way to learn ventriloquism and do the voice of Fats himself, and he absolutely storms it. His Corky is a masterclass portrayal of a man cursed with crippling shyness and negligible confidence, who creates a strident and extrovert alter ego who can say and express all the things and emotions he can't. It's easy to see how codependency and a loss of control could occur when the investment in this other character is so intensely needy. Corky should be able to survive without Fats, but without Corky, Fats is a goner. Ultimately, it becomes so that neither of them can survive without the other, and so they don't. It is love that kills Corky and Fats, just as Beauty killed the Beast in King Kong, or something like that. Hopkins is magnificent, and it's another example of why he's one of our greatest living screen actors. Every tick, inflection, every nuance builds a seamless characterization that is wholly believable. His struggle to retain control as Fats takes over is feverish and grueling to watch. You'll like him, sympathize, maybe even empathize, because he's really a victim, a damaged schmuck who just wants to be recognized for something and loved by someone. Universal themes, easy to identify with so long as the actor gets it right. And Hopkins does. Running him a close second is Burgess Meredith, a veteran character actor par excellence. He modelled his wily Ben Green character on Swifty Lazar, a lawyer and Hollywood talent agent who once scored 3 deals for Humphrey Bogart in one day, hence Bogey bestowing upon him the nickname Swifty, which stuck. He's on great cigar masticating form. Green recognises he has a duty of care where Corky is concerned, genuinely sympathises, but it only gets him dead in a lake in the middle of nowhere. Just goes to show, you let your guard down, kid, you'll get hit. Anne Margaret could do tender and vulnerable in her sleep, one of the most underestimated of Hollywood actresses. She had that rare quality of emotional intelligence and a dramatic range she was rarely given the opportunity to showcase. Her brand of sexiness was a paragon of visual appeal and smouldering taste. Ed Lauter often played characters of an intemperate nature to say the least, and usually looked like he was about to do someone some harm. His Duke adds an extra layer of edginess to the proceedings, the twist being that he's genuinely scared of losing Peggy Ann and is regretful for the breakdown of their relationship. Lauter plays it incredibly well. There's a nervy carnivalesque score from the ever-reliable Jerry Goldsmith and atmospheric cinematography by the prolific Victor J. Kemper, he who lends The Friends of Eddie Coyle and Dog Day Afternoon, so you get lots of expressionistic shadows and razor-sharp angles. Then there's Attenborough in the director's chair. He knows that the magic of cinema, like stage magic, is all about sleight of hand and distraction. Taking his cues from Cavalcanti, he crafts a story that tampers playfully with audience perceptions. As in Dead of Night, he introduces subtle suggestions that there is more to the dummy than meets the eye. When Fats is sat alone, his eyes move fractionally, even though Corky is not operating him. So that you question, is this really just a dummy? Is it something more? That seed of doubt is insidiously planted. Equally, Fats' facial expressions seem to change ever so subtly in the absence of his operator. Attenborough treats Fats as another character, directs him as another character, which of course is what he is. For Hopkins, it's a dual role. He plays both Corky and Fats, even though they are one and the same. What Magic is then is smart and creepy, an eerie and needling horror drama and love story. It's classic filmmaking, quietly artistic, minus pretension, and exercise in unsettling mood and atmosphere. It also effectively uses the old Hitchcock trick of audience manipulation by drawing sympathies onto the protagonist who has killed, murdered, and tried to cover it up. Corky has done bad things, but we root for him to succeed, to escape, to make it. In the endgame, he succumbs to the traditional code of established movie morality and doesn't prevail or get the girl. No happy ever after for him. For although half of him is sweetness and light, the other half is a selfish evil bastard creation. The existential conflict between the two serves up a moderately blood-chilling shadow play to bear witness to. I think if Dickie had taken the explicit and visceral direction of the new breed, maybe there'd have been more bums on seats. He could have added a few more cabins, populated them with hormonally charged teenagers, keggers on a break, maybe a family with some precocious kids, and a pesky but tuned-in dog. Fats could have done away with them using a variety of implements, knives, saws, hammers, shotguns, axes, crossbows, razor-edged dildos, all in a relentless welter of jump scares, blood, guts, and dick-shattering in violence. Nothing wrong with that approach, but Magic wasn't that kind of film, and it doesn't bother me one bit that the box office returns were poor, because it's a class act that I continue to enjoy and appreciate to this day. It's something for the more discerning horror movie viewer looking for something of creative quality with a thoughtful, crafted approach. It will creep you out, but with TLC. That's tender loving care, not totally loaded carnage. Thanks for your time and attention. Do whatever you want to do. Hit like, don't like, comment, subscribe, be a patron of my Patreon thing, make a financial contribution to keep the wheels turning via the thanks button, or just take your leave, disappearing, as if by magic. And now for my next trick. In a crisis, you become king. Come the hour, come the man, and the trouble you bring. Walk in wonder into the rain. Try and hit what you can with an arrow or sling. So pick a card, put it back in the pack. Ace of spades or a queen or a jack. It isn't magic, it's just part of the act. Were you honestly expecting more than that? At the altar you can hold court. Any symptom, any sign, any storm in a port. Living legend, says the report. You can feed them a line on the buyer or the board. So pick a card, put it back in the pack. Ace of spades or a queen or a jack. It isn't magic, it's just part of the act. Were you honestly expecting more than that? And now for my next trick, sort of girling off at the midsection. All the subtlety of a house break. When did you notice it was only misdirection? At the crossroads I made a deal. Take a soul, take a life, just to know how it feels. It's all illusion, nothing is real. Just a blindfold, a knife, and a girl on a wheel. So pick a card, put it back in the pack. Ace of spades or a queen or a jack. It isn't magic, it's just part of the act. Were you honestly expecting more